So this system is doing and dealing, I should say, exclusively with the wines themselves. And so this is where you're going to see other terms such as, well, we don't actually have it here. We've got things like fine herb here. We've got Riesling Trocken, and of course things like the Spätlese title down here. So this is where the Pradikat's vine system comes into it. Pradikat's vine is dealing with, well, talking generally speaking about sweetness levels. So to begin with, we've got Trocken. Trocken equals dry. We're talking about an off-dry wine. This is a Halb Trocken, off-dry or half-dry, as it were. And then this is also equivalently known as fine herb, which is interesting because we've got that down here. So this is a fine herb, which means, which equals off-dry. So a little bit of sweetness. Right, so that is the typical, those are words that can be sort of associated with any particular producer's wines in the whole entire country, which is important to note because the VDP, as I mentioned before, well, in one of our other videos as well, I mentioned before that the VDP is a group of producers, the top producers in all of the country, but not all of them, of course. There's only a few hundred. So that's important to note. So not every single wine is going to be named and labeled with the VDP thing. Only these particular top producers will. And of course with that, they're not always going to be known as cabinet and etc. So anyway, so starting off, again, this is going to be a sort of like a pyramid system. So we're starting off at the bottom. We've got cabinet. Cabinet is between dry and off-dry. Then we're moving up to Spätlese. Spätlese wines are going to be a little bit more fuller bodied, a little bit more richer. These will tend to be off-dry, well, at least off-dry, and then they will tend to be varying towards medium dry, so a little bit more sweeter again. Then we've got Auslese, and so Auslese, they're going to be, generally speaking, they're going to be influenced by either late harvest and a little bit of botrytis grapes, so grapes that have got noble rot on them as well. And so they're going to be, again, sweeter still, so Auslese wines, they're going to be between well, they're going to be, generally speaking, medium dry to sweet, or at least medium sweet. And then we're moving on to Beerenauslese, and so these are going to be sweet. These are going to have a lot of botrytis influence into them. And then top of the pyramid there is TBA, or Trockenbeerenauslese, and these wines are the sweetest and lushest of them all. So, and again, also some of the most sweetest wines in all of the world, which is very exciting. So basically, how they become sweeter and sweeter and sweeter and sweeter is because as the further we go up the triangle, the pyramid, the further we go up the pyramid, the more likely there is to have a late harvest sort of influence, and as I said, also a botrytis or noble rot influence as well in the grapes, which means that they're going to become sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. Now, what's important to note about this is also, I mean, as well as being a sweetness sort of indicator for consumers, this is also showing that there is much higher quality going into it. So the VDP producers and their wines, and when we're talking about the Pradikat's vine system, they have very specific things. So there's no machine harvesting at all. This is all hand harvest, So generally speaking, it's going to be higher quality as well. So you're with machine harvesting, just as a slight aside, with machine harvesting, you are likely to get other things like leaves and twigs and all the rest, all chucked into the big vat, and then that can be fermented in the wine themselves, not removed, that is. So fermented in the wines themselves, and that can start to give off flavors, so that's not good. Whereas, of course, with people that are hand harvesting, they're only going to be picking great bunches out, so that's important. Anyway, slight aside there. But and then the higher we go up into sort of the Auslese, Beerenauslese and Trockenbeerenauslese, since these guys are dealing with and wanting to create sweet wines, that is very much the goal, they are going through the vineyard quite a few different times to make sure that they're only picking grapes or bunches which have been affected by botrytis or noble rot, in order to make the sweetest and the sweetest wine. So generally speaking, a Trockenbeerenauslese wine, which we don't have any examples of right here, that's going to be something where the pickers, they're going through the vineyard, they would have gone through the vineyard up to 8-10 times or something like that, just often picking individual botrytis influenced or infected berries. So it's a very long and exhaustive process, but with that you're producing and getting to drink some of the most incredibly sweet and interesting and complex wines in the world. So this is been a bit of a rundown about the Pradikat's wine system, as well as a bit of a rundown overall in Germany and how their wines are sort of produced. Actually, before we go, I'm just going to mention, just to confuse you even further, as I said, so Trocken equals dry, and you've got all these different things. You've got Cabernet and Spätlese and all the rest. You can have wines which are picked at the Spätlese or the Cabernet sort of level, or even the Auslese and all the rest. But Spätlese is often quite a common one anyway. You can have grapes that are picked at the Spätlese, so more riper, more sweeter, generally speaking, but definitely much more riper. Must wait, as it were. These grapes are going to be much more sort of, or produce wines which are much more complex. So you can pick wines that are at the Spätlese level, the sugar level, and then you can ferment them till dry. So that means that the resulting wines are going to be much more fuller in body, generally speaking slightly higher in alcohol, but still only about 14%, which isn't crazy. But they will be dry. So if you do that, then this is what we would call a Spätlese Trocken. Which again is just something, I mean, it's a slight aside, but you do come across it. So if you're ever wondering, because I've just gone and told you that Spätlese equals sweet, or at least sweeter, and then Trocken equals dry, so why in the world? And there's two completely clashing ideas. So that's the idea. So people can then pick like Auslese grapes, which are really, really ripe, really, really intense, very, very complex sort of flavors there, which would, if they fermented in a normal sort of way, would produce a sweet wine, a very sweet wine, as well as being quite complex and aromatically. But if they wanted to, they could ferment that till dry, call it an Auslese Trocken, and that would just be a very, very intense, dry, often a Riesling. So that's that.